Hi, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we are going to talk about webinar marketing for financial advisors, and I have an expert guest, Mark Glickman from Buddy INS. I'm Claire Akin with Indigo Marketing Agency, and I'm really happy that you're here. We will dive right into the topic because we have a lot to cover today. To give you a little bit on my background, I'm a former investment advisor representative. My company, Indigo Marketing Agency, helps independent advisors to do their marketing for them. So everything from their websites, social media, content creation and video creation, YouTube, and of course, webinars, what we're talking about today. And so I have done dozens of webinars for top independent financial advisors out there. And for my own company, I have over 30 on-demand webinars for marketing strategy for independent financial advisors. So if you want to know anything about different marketing topics, check out our webinars on demand at indigomarketingagency.com/webinar archives. And I will turn it over to Mark to introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. And the reason I, of course, became familiar with Claire was because I watched one of her webinars when I went to her website, and it was awesome. And so since then, of course, we've been fast friends here. And we're doing something very similar with Buddy INS. We are long-term care experts, and we help agents and advisors in the long-term care space, but other lines of business like annuity, life insurance, and DI, to help accelerate their marketing and their technology. So as part of that whole package, we do educational webinars on behalf of our partners on usually long-term care planning topics for their clients. And because of that, we built a whole robust system that we're going to share today. Just to give you also a little bit of background on how I got into webinars, about 6 years ago, I became responsible for launching a major insurance carrier's product. And as part of that, I did not have a team of wholesalers like a lot of carriers have. So what I ended up doing was using webinars to scale my time. And instead of traveling around, I virtually traveled around to the offices giving webinar presentations. And so out of necessity, I had to learn how to do a webinar, how to market it, to get people to attend it. And because of all of that knowledge, I've probably done over 1,000 webinars in the past 6 years. So I'm really excited to be sharing everything I've learned for those out you that are looking to do it yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm super excited to have Mark here because he is one of the pros, one of the most experienced webinar experts in this space. And Mark and I were talking before this call about how we used to do a lot of traveling around to broker dealer conferences and advisory conferences and speaking in person. And we both were kind of relieved when, COVID hit and it turned into a virtual environment because webinars are so much easier to do, in my opinion, than to get up and, travel and get on stage in front of people and you're a little nervous. And it just makes it a lot more comfortable. It's easier delivery. It's super efficient. And so I think there's a lot of good news for advisors out there, even though, maybe you built your business with seminars, transitioning over to webinars really can be an easy, fun way to scale your business efficiently in the future. And so this is Mark's site, Buddy INS. He has so many different videos, webinars, tons of content to help advisors to build their long-term care business. And so check that out. I will link to it below. And then let's just go over what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, we'll talk about how advisors are using webinars. There's a lot of top advisors that have moved their business from seminar marketing or other marketing means to webinars in 2020, why webinars are so powerful and why they work so well, how you can choose the best topic for your audience, and then we'll walk you through 10 steps to creating your first webinar, which technologies to use, and how many leads to expect, which of course everyone wants to know. So let's talk a little bit, Mark, about how webinars are working for advisors. I know you have a lot of visibility to this and the advisors that you work with.
Yeah, and I would say that it always starts with education. And most of the people we work with, of course, they're looking out for the best interest of their client. And in order to do that, they have to educate their client on what their options are. And what webinars allow you to do is it allows you to scale, that one-on-one conversation, that education that you're doing over and over again to a larger audience. Now, back in, March of 2020, right, we had a lot of partners that we worked with said, I don't know that I want to be on video. They're just familiar, comfortable with the face-to-face environment. So I ran into more resistance there with going from a seminar to a webinar type of approach with this education. Well, what happened is the end of March, like that was a 180-degree change with COVID. And of course, it became a necessity to do it. But the bottom line is that it accelerated something that most of our partners wanted to do. And sometimes when you're put out of your comfort zone, you're forced to do something, that's when the greatest opportunities arise. So now I would say that everyone we work with kind of takes it for granted that they should learn how to do Zoom, meetings with clients one-on-one, but also webinars are a natural extension of that education process.
Yeah, and even beyond just, replacing your seminars, it's a great thing to have on your website where people can take the next step with you 24 hours a day when they're on your website. And so a lot of times, advisors have schedule a call buttons on their site, which is great. But what if somebody's not quite ready to do that? That's a big step. And so giving people an intermediary step to watch a webinar where they put in their email address and they can spend a half hour with you is a great way just to kind of build that trust journey on your site and through your online marketing.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that webinars are just a natural extension of your digital marketing. So if you were planning to use your website more, be on social media more, try to build relationships without geographical limitations across the country anyway, the webinar is just the natural next step that makes that happen. So aside from it being an extension from seminars, it's also just an extension of your digital marketing, your persona, and the way you nurture your clients.
Yeah, and I was on a call yesterday with an advisor that does a lot of podcasting and also a lot of TV ads. And he said, "Well, if I do a webinar, should I stop doing those things?" And I said, "No, no, this is going to augment both of those things because people can see your video ads or they can listen to your podcast and then they can go watch your webinar and get a deeper experience with you." And so here are just some of the reasons that webinars are so cool for advisors. So first of all, they're great for small or large audiences. The way we run webinars for advisors is we automate them on their site. So you may do one webinar per year that hundreds of people watch over the course of the year. So it's super, super efficient. And it's really great for complex ideas. So Mark does long-term care insurance. A lot of these are kind of, something that a blog post would be very dry. And it's a more complex idea than a 2-minute video. And so you really want to walk people through the ideas and lay it out for them in a way that they can understand and buy into. One of the most important things is that as people are signing up for your webinar, we're capturing their email address and then they go into your automation where they get follow-up emails encouraging them to schedule a call with you. And so we see a really high conversion rate for webinars. So if you sent somebody a LinkedIn message, hey, check out my website and schedule a call with me, you may get 3 to 5% of people taking that action on a good day. But with webinars, we see 20 to 40% of people who you invite to a webinar, if you use a relevant topic that's interesting and compelling to them, 20 to 40% of those people will sign up to watch the webinar. And so that is a crazy high conversion rate that is just really higher than anything else we've seen. And that's why we encourage all of our advisors to do webinars. And so I think there's a lot of reasons that webinars are so powerful, but of course it comes with a little bit of challenges. And so I will let Mark kind of cover some of the challenges and the pros and cons of traditional webinars.
Yeah, the idea is, of course, that you have a lot of different options for how to do webinars. So you can do it live, which we actually prefer. We do it live and then we record it to make it more of an event, kind of like a seminar, and get more people to want to register for the live event and ask live questions and things like that. Or you can do it recorded, version. Because of all the different options you have, I think that's the most challenging thing for most advisors out there that are trying to do it themselves is like, what format do I want to use? And then how do I use the technology? And how am I on camera and doing that at the same time? And how do I get used to the presentation style, right? So there's just a lot of choices that you have. It's not a bad thing that you have these choices, but you have to realize there's no right or wrong answer. And at the end of the day, it just takes practice.
Yeah.
So my best advice to overcome these challenges is to just practice and do it. So for example, one of the bullets here is low attendance rate. If you're finding that people aren't registering for your webinar, that's the issue you're going to have to solve first, because if you're putting all of this effort and investment of your time and money into producing a webinar, no one's showing up. Well, you got to go back to marketing 101 and figure out how do you address that issue first to tap into the right audience to make it worth your time. So when we do private webinars, we make sure that we target to get at least 50 people to register just to make it worth the time to produce the entire webinar itself. And we do other events that are public events where we have all the advisors invite their clients to our long-term care educational webinars. And therefore, we know we're guaranteed to have a certain audience minimum, and it's going to be worth the time no matter what ends up happening because of all the people that are going to register. So the challenges are more getting familiar and testing out what works for you, but don't let that keep you from doing it. Just be open-minded to experimentation. I think marketing is all about trial and error and looking at the analytics and figuring out what works.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you hit on is just practicing. And so, one of the reasons that we run automated webinars is because a lot of advisors, this is going to be the first webinar that they've done. And so, I've seen advisors have live webinars as their first introduction to doing a webinar, and it can be very stressful. There's technology challenges. It's just too much for the first one. So, I recommend doing an automated webinar at first, kind of practicing your presentation, getting it compliance approved, not worrying about any technology glitches. We can edit out any issues that you have. And then, if you promote it in a way that's on your website, it feels like a live webinar. So people think that our webinars are live webinars because when they go to your site, they can register for the next available time slot, but it's recorded and there's a countdown clock and it plays automatically. And we know that everything's going to go perfect every single time. And so it's a great introduction. And then as you do more and more, like Mark does them all the time, every day, then you can do them live and you can promote them like a live event. And so it's a good kind of introduction into doing webinars as you get more comfortable with them, that you can kind of adapt your approach. So for automated webinars, what we do, and full disclosure, this webinar that we're recording right now is not live. You may think it's live, it may feel live. You can chat us a question and somebody will real time chat you back, but it's through email. It's not a live webinar, but it
Well,
feels like
Claire, it feels really live to me.
feels like real life to me too. But we do automated webinars just because we have seen that we can get more people to attend them. So about half the people that sign up will watch the version on the time that they sign up for in that time slot. And about half watch the replay that we send out the next day. And it all runs automatically. So I can record these webinars, a couple for, each week, and then they run for years on my website. And if you go to my website and see the archives, you can see webinars back from, I think, 2016 and 17. And so you get so much mileage out of an automated webinar. And so I really recommend these. It's, of course, there's a lot of different options out there for advisors. The challenge is you want to try a lot of different topics when you're thinking about doing webinars, and then run with your best one and think about, if you know the topic that's going to hit home for your audience and for your network, record that as an automated webinar and use it for the entire year on your site. And that can be a really efficient way for advisors to augment their marketing. And so this is just a general framework of how we help advisors to create their webinar. So first of all, selecting the topic. And I would say this is the most important part, is you want to select a topic that is going to get a lot of registrations. And so what we do here is we look at all of the content that you've ever produced, all of the pages on your site, all of the different marketing avenues you've tried in the past, and we try to pick the winner and we try to improve it a little bit, but pick something that we know is going to do really, really well. And then we want to build your offer or your call to action. Frequently, this is a phone call that people can schedule while watching your webinar. They can click to schedule a call to ask specific questions about their circumstance. And then for our advisors, we create and design their presentation for them. We help them to record it. Of course, you need compliance approval. And then we set up the automated webinar and run it for them. So promoting it on their website, by email, across social media, with referral partners, getting as much exposure as possible to that webinar so that they get entered into the automation and you are able to follow up with leads. So that's really our framework here. So Mark, walk us through how you select topics. I know you do webinars not only for your firm, but for advisors. How do you choose the topics that are going to work?
Yeah, and just, Claire's process is great, especially if you want to kind of own the content and present your message and your approaches or your strategies that you're trying to present to your audience. Our approach is a little bit different because we're doing it on behalf of a huge community of other advisors that entrust us with their client relationships, and that we're going to educate the right way and send their clients back to them. So for that reason, we try to do topics that, of course, have mass appeal across all of our partners. For us, long-term care planning and insurance is really the core of what we do in our community. It's where I have my subject matter expertise as an actuary and also as somebody who works closely with all the top long-term care specialist agents in the country. And so I get to see firsthand what they're doing. So every other webinar we do it on a long-term care insurance strategy. Where can consumers find the most value? It's not product-centric, it's just solution-centric. So when they talk to their agent advisor, that advisor can find the best product for their needs once they've learned what the value proposition is in terms of the strategy, like taking a tax deduction for a business owner for long-term care is one good example. And then every other month besides that, we try to do non-insurance focused things. So we talk about the planning process. I'll have elder law attorneys on with me. I'll have providers on with me and talk about what's the realities of the planning process itself. Because the insurance is really there as a funding mechanism to activate your plan. But the plan is really one of the more important components of why you're thinking through these steps. And is your family going to be involved with it? And what financial resources do you need? So for us, it's about doing what's best for the client, involves educating on all of those topics. And that's kind of how we set it out to kind of create some balance between insurance related topics and just some overall planning topics.
Awesome. Yeah. And for our advisors, we do also kind of that dichotomy of kind of a broad webinar on a less financial topic. What we do there is often a webinar for advisors about what they do, who they serve, and how they help. And this is something that's appropriate for anybody that comes to their homepage. They can learn more about why they became an advisor, the services they offer, how they get paid, their credentials, the type of clients they serve, the benefits they offer their clients. So it's just a way to get to know the advisor and kind of start that relationship. And then the other type of webinars we do are really specialist campaigns. So things like, what you should do about the Bristol Myers Squibb pension closure, or, should you take the Intel pension buyout offer that is coming, or, whatever your topic is for your specialty, you could create a webinar for that, whether it's an employer specific campaign or, how physicians can save more for retirement before taxes. Whatever it is for you, you want to create a very specialist webinar that really explains all the mechanics of what you do and how you help clients, and allows your clients to see how their lives could be impacted by the work that you do. So choosing the topic is incredibly important for our advisors. And so I always encourage advisors to think about what is the one urgent problem you solve for a specific group and lead with that. And so here's just some examples, how married couples can maximize their Social Security benefits, an overview of the Qualcomm 401k plan investments, understanding the Intel pension plan, our mid-year economic update. And so these are just topics that are going to get a lot of views, because really, it doesn't necessarily matter too much what you're talking about on your webinar. You just want to start building that relationship. You want people to get to know, like, and trust you. You want them to kind of look to you as a subject matter expert, and just kind of start the conversation and pique their interest on the topics that you help them with.
Yeah, and Claire, I think you really nailed it, which is sometimes people think that the purpose of their webinar, of course, is the topic, right? Well, the real purpose is for people to see you on camera so that they're comfortable talking to you about the topic. And
Yes.
that's where that you mentioned, know, like, trust, the relationship building aspect. So I think the one big tip I would have is make sure to be yourself and choose a topic that you feel like you're proficient in. There's so many topic options, but again, the topic may not be the most important thing. It's that you're confident in presenting that topic and it represents who you really are. So people want to talk to you.
Right. And often I recommend that advisors just do whatever their discovery call or their first meeting with a client, whatever that conversation is, turn that into a webinar, because you're used to doing it every day or every week with clients. You're comfortable with the questions you ask and the process that you go through. And if that is your kind of client service introduction, then it makes sense to put it into a digital format that people can experience from the comfort of their own homes. And so, whatever it is for you, just figure out the first step that you want people to take with your firm. For me, I want advisors to start thinking about their marketing, start thinking about their specialty, because we help advisors to embrace a specialty through their marketing. So a lot of the webinars that I do are on how advisors can pick a specialty, because that's the perfect introduction to working with our firm. So adapting that for you and your business is really key there. And then also, having a really easy to take offer or a call to action is important. I see so many advisors out there doing marketing, but not telling people what action to take next. And so you could have the greatest videos or the greatest webinar, the greatest white paper in the world, but what do you want people to do after they've consumed that content? So a very easy next step. So for us, it's a free marketing strategy call. Mark, I know that you have some different options. What are the options that people can take to get started with your firm?
Yeah, one of the things that we do, we call webinar sharing. And so the idea is that you can go to our website, just fill out a quick form, and you'll get an email template with a unique tracking link. So when you forward that to your audience, the people that register get noted on a list just for the advisors that we work with. Because it's so easy for them to just forward that and promote that and have people attend, and then we're taking care of all the production, all the follow-up for them. That's really an easy way to get started with us. At the end of the day, we also do a lot more for our partners, where we have a CRM, where we help them, again, continue to nurture and engage. We have outreach. There's other things we do as part of our full partnership program. but we call it the Buddy INS Lite type of model where, yeah, just attend a webinar yourself first. Get a referral partner to attend it themselves first. See what it's all about. And then they'll actually come back to you and they'll say like, oh man, I wish I had invited my audience to that one because they saw it and they really enjoyed it. And we record it so they have the ability to do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that gives people such an easy next step to take. And so some offer examples that may be appropriate for advisors out there, a 15-minute Q&A phone call, take a risk questionnaire, schedule a social security review appointment, download a free financial plan. So all of the advisors that we work with, we create sample financial plans on their site, and those pages get a lot of visits because people want to see what they're buying and how you work and what the output is going to be after they work with you. One of our advisors helps business owners to sell their firm. And so the offer that he does is a complimentary business valuation. So you can answer that age-old question of, could I sell my business and retire with confidence? That's what business owners want to know, right? So that's perfect for his firm. And then for one of the TPAs that we do their marketing for them is find out how much you're paying in 401k fees. So they're helping people to redo their 401k plans at a lower cost. And so appropriate next step is find out how much you're paying in your 401k fees for your plan and see if they can improve it. So you want to make the best offer for you that's compelling to the people that you work with.
And just the theme of all of those things, if you looked at it, is value, right? How can I add value to my client in a way that's time efficient for me and really valuable for them? And so I think all of those things are great examples of ways to do that.
Yeah. And so once you've kind of chosen your topic and your offer, then it's really easy to get started creating your presentation. And so we do this for the advisors that we create webinars for. So first of all, we write it with text only, and we use Donald Miller's story branding to first talk about kind of your story, your background, your passion, and then turn it around and talk about the obstacle that the audience is facing and why they're in this perilous situation where they need to take action now, and then offer them an easy solution and a really easy way to get started. And so that's kind of the format that we write our webinars in. And then we, do about one slide per presentation minute. So a 30-minute presentation would be about 30 slides. And then we, design it. We have a professional designer that does your logo, your background, your colors, the imagery on your slides, makes it really engaging to look at, as well as guiding you to speak through the presentation. And so that's basically the format that we use. And then we have our designer design it for you. And if you are doing a DIY webinar, I recommend trying Upwork.com. There's great designers on there. People pay around $2 per slide to have it designed. And so if you want to do your own webinar, this is kind of an option for you, is getting your webinar designed through Upwork. And then I'll turn it over to you to talk about recording. How do you recommend advisors record their webinars, and how do you record your own webinars?
Yeah, actually, it's really simple with the technology that's available today, which is we use Zoom, as a lot of people do for one-on-one meetings. There's a record feature right in Zoom. In fact, Claire and I are producing this webinar right now the same way I'm discussing, which is hit start record. And then if you can even do it in one take, you don't need to edit it too much, but we can edit it afterwards. We can add like additional music or things to the front end and the back end of this. So that's a really easy way to do it. We also use Zoom Webinar for larger events where we can have Q&A, we can have a chat box, we can have a little bit of extra features in terms of follow-ups with people and reminder emails and things like that. And then everyone, again, can't see everyone else because it's in an environment where it's protected. So that's an additional pay service from Zoom to use their webinar platform. But if you have larger events, that can be a good option. But the recording of that actual event happens within the software. It's already automatically starts to record, and it stores it in the cloud when it's recorded. So recording, it's kind of actually pretty easy today. And you can do a lot with that recording, putting it into YouTube or Wistia. You can put it on your website. And so as you kind of get to know what the software you're using provides as the output, then you can decide how you want to use the recording.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know, Mark, you mentioned before that one of the key things, so I think advisors overthink this step of how they're going to record the presentation. What really you should be thinking about is how you're going to deliver the presentation. And to Mark's point, practice makes perfect there. When I was in business school, they gave us this data that showed that the top business school graduates who got the best positions, the only correlating factor from the study that they did was hours spent practicing interviewing. And so the more that you practice interviewing, the better that you get at it, the better that you can interview, the higher paying job you can get, and the list goes on and on. And so practicing your webinar will make it better. And so I recommend doing at least 1 or 2 run throughs where you do it on camera, you record it, you watch it, and then you improve the next time. Because the more webinars you do, the more you practice, the better your delivery and your presentation will get. And then the more engagement you'll have with your viewers.
Yeah, here's another tip along those lines, because I'm the kind of person that hates practicing, and I'm sure a lot of you out there, it's painful process, and you don't like seeing yourself on camera and all of that kind of stuff. So what I do is I find smaller events to do that are live. Maybe they're just one-on-one types of trainings, or with clients, you can kind of do it as a webinar, but a one-on-one. Practice it that way. And then if you've done it like 4 or 5 times in front of clients one-on-one, doing it for a webinar in front of 100 people is going to feel very natural to you. So just find other practical use cases that allows you to practice.
Yeah, and another way I like to kind of practice is training somebody else on your team. So if you have a junior advisor, if you have admin on your team, training them the way that you like to do your sales calls or the way that you like to do your videos, you will automatically start noticing, wow, do I want this presented, by somebody else on my team in the same way that I'm doing it? Or do I want to change the way that I approach this? Or do I want to make it better? And so teaching somebody else is the best way in some cases to learn how to deliver your webinar in the best way for you.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and so of course, after you record the webinar, it's a great time to get compliance approval. And so I like to tell advisors to get compliance approval at 2 points. The first is the design presentation to make sure all of the text is appropriate and approved by compliance. And then the second is the video itself of the webinar. And so it's hard to change the video. You probably will have to record it again if they don't like something that you've said. So that's why it's important to do it in 2 steps so that at least the text is approved on your presentation. And then hopefully if you stick to kind of the script on your text of your presentation, it will also get compliance approval for the full video of the webinar itself.
Yeah, and in terms of content, one other good best practice for compliance is don't sell something. It feels natural, like I'm going to go on a webinar and I'm trying to convert leads or I'm trying to sell them on what I'm doing. Well, don't do that. Just educate on that topic, which is what is engaging and warmer potentially anyway. Well, when you're using that approach, again, compliance tends to be more in line with it because you're net naming particular products. You don't have to worry about, the client like trying to buy it on their own, whatever you're offering. They'll come to you if they actually want to take the next steps and drill down deeper into their individual situation.
Right. Yep. And so for our advisors, we're never making recommendations. We're never talking about specific investments. We're talking about why they do what they do and how they help people and what their goal is for working with their clients. What do they want their clients to walk away from? So it's very qualitative and, not making specific recommendations. So yeah. And so the next step, once you've recorded your webinar, it's compliance approved, then setting up your automated webinar. And this is something that I do recommend outsourcing to a professional because it takes a lot of time and there's a lot of small technical steps in between. And so we use Easy Webinar for our webinars. And so advisors, if you're watching this, you've signed up through Easy Webinar, you've either elected to watch the replay or you've signed up for a time slot with a countdown timer. And so you can customize all of these options. And so you could show maybe only one time in the future if you want to seem like your webinar is live and it's coming up at some date in the future. You could have some launch date that people have to register for that time. Or the way I do it is I have a bunch of different lists here of, the 4 times in the future, maybe today, tomorrow, and the next day that people can schedule to watch the webinar. The reason we do that is we know that if people set aside a time to watch the webinar and they're not aware that it's that easy for them to watch the replay, they'll actually block out distractions and focus. On-demand videos are a little bit tricky because people can watch them and then they can get distracted and wander off. And so we want advisors watching our webinars to think this is a 30-minute time slot. I have to watch it now or I don't know how I'm going to get this information again. And so that's why we do them this way. Of course, tomorrow you will get the replay of this full webinar. So if you missed it or if you have to step away for a minute, you can watch the replay. And so all of this is customizable within Easy Webinar. It does take a little bit of finesse to learn it and to get it just right. And that's what we do for our advisors. But you really want to add a registration page so you can have people at the end of, if they go and they read a blog post of yours, at the end of that blog post, direct them to register for your webinar, have it on your email template, feature it on your social media profiles. You'll put it far and wide across your marketing so that you're funneling as much traffic as possible to your webinar. And then we also have timed offers. So within the last 5 minutes of this webinar, you'll see something come up where you can save $500 if you want us to do a webinar for you. And then also that automated follow-up sequence. So you'll get a couple of emails over the next days asking, did you enjoy the webinar? Do you have any questions? Do you want to schedule your marketing strategy call? So building this takes a little bit of work, but you set it and forget it. And then people are getting the countdown reminders, they're getting the follow-up emails, and it's just a very seamless process once you actually do get it set up.
Yeah, and one thing, if you've done seminar selling before, that's very similar with webinars, is you have to have a process for following up. Right? You've spent all this time and effort, you've gotten these people to attend, they're engaged, they want to learn more, and then you drop the ball and you don't make the phone call and call them, right? So obviously email follow-ups help, and you can self-schedule with like a Calendly tool and something like that where they can book on your calendar, but you got to make those follow-up calls and dedicate time to do that after the webinar, just to make sure that you're getting the most out of your investment there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see this happen all the time. I come across advisors who come to us and they have lists of thousands of email addresses that have come to their seminars that they never followed up with. And now they're thinking, well, maybe we should market to these cold leads. It's better than nothing, but it's really important to follow up quickly. And so for this webinar, you will get somebody emailing you or calling you the next day saying, hey, how'd you like the webinar? Do you have any questions? Because it's on their mind. It's fresh in their mind. We don't want to wait months or years to follow up with these leads. So really striking while the iron is hot is important there. And so, of course, building your registration page on your website, we do all of this for our advisors and allow them, a little snippet of why they want to attend the webinar. Also, having a video invitation to the webinar is a great thing to put here. I know, Mark, you do a lot of videos saying, hey, join us for a webinar. We're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. You'll walk away with A, B, and C benefit. Can't wait to see you there. It's as simple as that. It doesn't need to be a long video. It just needs to be a little bit personal and a little bit interactive there.
Yeah, I think the thing we're laser focused on, and this is where Claire and I really overlap and have synergies, is finding the best use of your time. For me, it's about producing the content in as low time cost as possible, and then doing as much of it, on different topics as we can. So the process there with how you automatically follow up with people, how you make sure you're engaging with the right people at the right time. We actually have a CRM with our partners to make sure that follow-up process is easy. Think about how to make sure you streamline all the steps here, because the more that you do that streamlining, the more things that you can do. And we only do videos because they're easy to produce because of the format in which we do them. If you're finding it difficult to do something, then you're probably not going to end up executing and doing it at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I totally agree. You want to make it a form of content that you're actually going to produce and that is easy for you to produce. And so videos for me and for Mark are kind of the way. I know a lot of advisors like to write, which is fantastic. If that's you, go for it. If you like to podcast, do that. The way that you're comfortable and that you enjoy getting your content and your story out there is really going to be the best option for you. So once you've recorded your webinar, it's automated. This is my favorite part. So promoting your automated webinar. So all you have now is a link to share, and you can share it with anybody, and you can get really creative with the way that you share your webinar. So of course you want to add it to your homepage. So front and center on your homepage so people can sign up for your webinar there. People that are Googling, and finding you on Google and getting to your site can automatically sign up there. Adding it to the events page on your website is a good option. Promoting it by email. And the way that we do this is we actually do 3 or 4 different emails for our advisors. So it could be, save the date for our upcoming webinar, register now, last chance to register, and then watch the replay. So you're getting 4 different touch points, encouraging people, making sure they know about it, and trying to get as many people as possible to watch it. And then asking your partners to share with their network. So if you work with referral partners, say, mortgage brokers, CPAs, estate planning attorneys that serve the same type of clients as you could ask them to share with their network. And if your webinar is valuable and interesting, it makes sense that they would want to pass along something valuable to their network. And so that's a great way to get in front of new people that you don't already know. Also, of course, adding it to the end of your existing marketing campaign. So blog posts, podcasts, videos, whatever you're doing, just mention your webinar at the end and funnel people in that way. We also see a lot of advisors doing paid Facebook ads for their webinars, which is a great option. I do paid ads for my webinars. It does get a little expensive. So for Facebook ads, we pay about $21 per person that signs up for our webinars, which is worth it for me. But you need to think through the financials and the economics of that. But we also use LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is such a good option for this. So if you do a webinar, say on how an employer-specific retirement plan can be optimized, you can search on LinkedIn, find everyone that works at that company. You can do it by location, so they're everybody in your area that works at that company, and send a message to every single person saying, hey, I just did a webinar on how you can maximize your benefits package at your employer. Check it out. Let me know if you have any questions. And so we do this on behalf of our advisors to send out their webinars to their qualified prospects. This is such a great, easy, low-cost way to get your webinar in front of people that you don't already know. And then a final point here is I like to see advisors getting creative with the way they're using their webinar. And one idea for that is just sending it as a follow-up when you're introduced to somebody. So say your client introduces you to, a friend, family, or coworker of theirs. It's such a nice way to follow up on an email and saying, hey, I really enjoyed meeting with you. Let me know if you have any questions. And by the way, here's a 30-minute webinar that I recorded if you're interested. And so using this as part of your follow-up, your sales process is a great way to give people another option to engage with you.
Yeah, I think this is so important. And I would say people don't recognize the importance of it enough. Is if you're worried about how many people are registering, you have to take these steps and be consistent with it to really get and build momentum. And like you said, make it easy to be shareable. The time it takes you to do these things is going to affect you actually doing them. So if you have a checklist that you do for every webinar, that's a great tip, is just follow these steps. Every time I do a webinar, I post it on social media. As long as you're consistently doing that, it will grow. But you have to analyze and make sure you're getting the results that you're looking for based on where you're sharing it, or find more audiences to share it with.
Absolutely. Yep. And so these are just some great points. And we do have a checklist that we run for our advisors, and we do everything from sharing it for them to doing all their emails, doing their Facebook ads, their LinkedIn campaigns, and we even sometimes do Twitter ads, which can be a great option depending on your audience. And then also sharing on YouTube. We have some advisors that are really active on YouTube, so you can actually post either your invitation to your webinar or the full webinar itself on YouTube to get some exposure in that way. And then once you've kind of launched your webinar, Mark, I know you coach advisors to do this. Once people have seen a webinar of yours that you do for advisors, how do you recommend they follow up with those people?
Yeah, sometimes the system that you're using, whether it's Easy Webinar or Zoom Webinar like we are using, will have a follow-up email that's automatically sent out X number of days after, even with the recording of the link. Those tend not to be as personal though. So it's good because people will be able to see the webinar if they missed it. And roughly 60% of people will miss a webinar even when they register for it, so it's easy to register, but then it's easy also to kind of skip it. But if they get the recording afterwards, a lot of those people will come back and watch that over time. But then you want to do your own follow-ups too. And so we do a lot of custom follow-ups for our partners, which is direct outreach emails that get sent out on their behalf. What did you learn from the webinar? It asks them a question. It opens up a conversation. And the client will oftentimes respond, maybe not even to that question, but just say like, thanking them about the knowledge that they learned. That's the most common response that we get, is kind of a warm reaction. And that's really self-motivating for you, is when you see, again, on the webinar, you're not hearing from the clients directly, but afterwards, when you get that feedback, that's great. And you can also see, because they're attending the webinar, if it's live for the entire period of time in terms of the way we do it. And then we plug that into a CRM so that every potential lead at least gets followed up with one follow-up call. And they're not going to be interested in buying or planning today necessarily. But the fact is that if they got something out of that, they want to share with you their feedback. The next time they attend the webinar, they're more likely to do it because now they have a relationship with you. And after they attend webinar after webinar on a particular topic that's important to them, eventually they will start to ask, maybe I should be doing this kind of plan for myself.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. One bonus tip I'll give about following up is something that I used to do all the time. Now I have a sales team that will call people who watched our webinars the next day, but I used to just do a voicemail drop. And so there's this technology called Sly Broadcast. So what I do is I record a voicemail, and it would say, good morning, it's Claire Akin with Indigo Marketing Agency. I saw that you watched my webinar yesterday. I want to know if you had any questions, and I hope you enjoyed it. You drop it to their voicemail the next morning. You don't have to customize it with their name because you're just saying good morning, and they get it, and they they actually hear your voice. And I have a lot of advisors that would actually dial me back on my cell phone, and we would talk. And so they can even text you back. And so that's just another idea for increasing that engagement and kind of just creating that easy way for them to correspond with you.
Yeah, I think we always recommend our partners do an email, a call, and then a text as well. And a lot of people do respond much better with text, especially if you're working with business owners and people that are busy during the week. Sometimes a quick text is what they are able to respond to given their time, constraints. So just think about the channel that your audience really wants to be communicated in and make sure that you address it that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so this slide really talks about basically the mechanics of a webinar funnel. And this is what we see. Of course, it depends on, the webinar topic, the size of your audience, the precision of your audience, whether they are, a lot of people that are very qualified, or whether it's a broader audience that don't know you as well. But generally, we see for an email list of about 1,000 people, we will get about 5% of people to register for your webinar. About half of those people will watch the webinar, and about half of the people who have registered will watch the replay. And then about 5 of those people will actually set an appointment with you. So to the extent you can get your webinar in front of 1,000 people, you should be able to get 5 appointments. And these are pretty conservative numbers. A lot of times our advisors do a lot better than this. But if you're doing Facebook ads or LinkedIn campaigns and just getting your webinar out there in front of thousands of people, then you can get a lot of appointments as a result. One of the webinars we've done is for an advisor that has a very good search engine presence for a specific employer. The employer happens to be Amazon. And so when people Google the Amazon benefits package, they get to his website, they can watch his webinar, and then, some percentage of these people schedule an appointment. So every day there's people searching for these keywords that are eventually getting funneled through and getting on his calendar at no additional cost for this advisor. And so it's just a phenomenal funnel for him.
Yeah, it's important to set expectations on these metrics because they also depend on the client and their relationship to you, right? If this is somebody who's already your client, your registration percentages are going to be like this. More people are going to attend because they already know who you are. But also picture if you're doing Facebook ads and the person doesn't know who you are, set lower bar expectations as to what percentage of them are going to register and attend, because again, they just don't have the same relationship with you. So just think about that when you're deciding who to email and what your goals are, but definitely set goals and compare what you're actually getting to those goals to figure out what's the reason why people are or are not registering.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about this, about using your webinar to follow up with people you meet, sharing with referral partners, and then asking your clients to share with the people that they know. And this is something that can be a little tricky for advisors to do, just like asking for referrals is tricky. And so if you work with a marketing firm like ours, we just do this for you. And so we send emails saying, do you know somebody who could use our help? If you do, here's a webinar to forward. And all they have to do is click to forward and say, this is my advisor. It prompts them to do that. And it's a great introduction to you and your firm. And so it's really important to ask for referrals and give people a very easy way to refer you, because we know that the biggest source of new clients for advisors are referrals. And so the final step of our webinar promotion process is targeting people that you don't already know using LinkedIn. And so we send 300 LinkedIn messages each month for our advisors. From that, we get about 15 webinar viewers on average, and then about 3 leads out of that. And so to Mark's point, these are people that don't already know you, that are kind of colder leads, but it still works. The numbers still add up, and it's still a great way to get more connections on LinkedIn who will then see your content that you're posting in the future, and just to start, growing your audience over time.
Yeah, just think about like why someone would want to speak to you. Just take it from their perspective. And again, if you approach them the right way, in a warm way, as opposed to a salesy type of way, you're going to increase your expectations, even with people that don't know you yet. Like you were walking up to them at a conference and you've never met them before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so if you are short on time, of course, we can do the heavy lifting for you. We have a full webinar package at Indigo Marketing. I'll walk you through briefly what that entails. So first of all, we create your custom webinar. So we help you choose the topic, we write your presentation, we design it, we create your webinar kit, which includes your registration page, Facebook posts, LinkedIn messages, invitations, follow-up automated emails, everything we build and we write for you. And then we get all of that whole package approved by compliance. And then the next step is lead generation. So promoting your webinar. So we automate it, we launch your registration page, we add it to your website, we add it to your social profiles, we promote on LinkedIn and Facebook, and we do all of the work to get your webinar out in front of more people. And so if you do need helping with your webinar, all that you need to do as part of this process is schedule your webinar strategy call. You can click the link below or check out the offer that will come up in the upper right corner of this webinar. And then we will schedule your call. We'll choose your topic. We'll provide all of the notes and information for you to create your webinar. All you need to do is record it. And so of course you want to practice. Of course you want to, get our help to make it look and sound as good as possible, but don't overthink it. There's not an easier way to do a webinar than working with a team that does them all the time and can help you answer all your questions about technology, lighting, sound, all of that. Just make it as easy as possible so that you can actually execute some of these ideas and get your webinar out in front of more people. And so with that, you can chat any of your questions into the chat box for this webinar, and Mark and I will follow up, and we will email you a personal response to your questions. And Mark, I'll let you close it out with any final thoughts.
Yeah, well, appreciate you for wanting to learn this again. Think about whether you want to do it yourself or whether you want to outsource it to Claire's firm or you want to partner with us. We do long-term care webinars and other insurance webinars. And again, you have a lot of different options out there, but make sure you're using the best use of your time and don't be afraid to experiment. So good luck in doing your webinars. Actually, I'm doing a webinar in about 20 minutes here. And as you get used to this, you will just get into that flow where it'll become easier and easier to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mark's webinars are fantastic. And so if you do want to kind of dip your toe into the webinar arena without doing a lot of work or spending any money, work with Mark. So he does webinars for your clients that you can invite your clients to learn about long-term care planning. They're fantastic. He is an expert on the subject. And so it's a great way to, invite your clients to a webinar on a topic where they're going to learn a lot. And then, you're there to work with Mark to answer any questions for them. And so I will link to Mark's website and some of his different webinars below so you can check those out.
And
So
by the
thanks
way,
so much.
if you're not familiar in long-term care planning, which a lot of advisors, again, that's not their expertise in their niche, we have a whole community of long-term care specialists that we can partner you with. So that's another component to everything we do as well.
Yep, absolutely. It's great to get an expert partner that can help really walk your clients along that planning journey, which is pretty complex. So thank you so much, Mark, for being a guest. And thank you to the advisors out there watching. And we'll talk to you soon. And don't hesitate to get in touch.